VSEPR. This is a theory based off of rules that allow us to look at a two-dimensional Lewis molecule structure and find what the molecule would look like in real life. VSEPR stands for valence shell electron pair repulsion. This acronym is a way of stating that electrons will try to be as far apart from each other as possible. Bonded electron pairs will repel less than non-bonded electron pairs. Okay, so the first shape is trigonal planar. It has 3 bonded electrons and 0 unbonded electrons. The bond angles are all at 120 degrees. And it is called a trigonal planar because it forms a triangle on a single plane. It is nonpolar because the 3 negatively charged electrons would all meet in the middle along with the positive charge, and the 2 would cancel out. Okay, so this one is a bent trigonal planar. It has 2 bonded electrons and 1 non-bonded. The bond angles are less than 120 degrees because the unshared electron is repelling more. The shape is a bent triangle because the unshared causes the triangle to be bent, and it is on a single plane. And it is polar because the 2 unbonded electrons would meet on the bottom, or the two bonded electrons would meet at the bottom, and the unbonded electron doesn't affect the polarity. Okay, so the third shape is a tetrahedral. It has 4 bonded electrons and 0 unbonded electrons. The bond angles are at 109.5 degrees between the bonded electrons. The shape name is tetrahedral because the atoms, the 4 atoms would touch the corners of a tetrahedral, so a tetrahedral shape. It is nonpolar because all the charges of the bonded electrons would meet in the middle. Okay, so the next one is tetrahedral pyramidal. It has 3 bonded electrons and 1 non-bonded electron. The bond angles all are less than 109.5 degrees. It is called tetrahedral pyramidal because it forms a pyramid shape around the central atom. And it is polar because the charges of the bonded electrons will all meet at the bottom, and the unbonded electron doesn't affect the charge. Okay, so the next one is tetrahedral pyramidal. It has 3 bonded electrons and 1 non-bonded electron. The bond angles all are less than 109.5 degrees. It is called tetrahedral pyramidal because it forms a pyramid shape around the central atom. And it is polar because the charges of the bonded electrons will all meet at the bottom, and the unbonded electron doesn't affect the charge. Okay, so the next shape is the tetrahedral bent molecular geometry. It has 2 bonded electrons and 2 non-bonded electrons. The bond angles are all less than 109.5 degrees. The shape name, the electrons form a bend in the tetrahedral shape of the molecule, like so. And it is polar because the charges from the bonded electrons will meet at the bottom, and the 2 non-bonded electrons won't affect the polarity. Okay, so the next shape is trigonal bipyramid. It has 5 bonded electrons and 0 non-bonded electrons. The shape, the bond angles are 90 degrees between these 2 and these, and 120 degrees between the single plane triangle. It is called a trigonal bipyramid because it forms 2 pyramids off of the triangle base, so like one here and another on the other side. It is nonpolar because all of the charges of the bonded electrons meet in the center. Okay, so next is the seesaw molecular geometry. It has 4 bonded electrons and 1 unbonded. The bond angles are unknown. It gets this shape because it forms a sort of seesaw with the bonded electrons. It is polar because these 2 charges will meet at the bottom. So the next is the T-shaped. It has 3 bonded electrons and 2 unbonded electrons. The bond angles are 180 degrees between these two and 90 degrees between these 2 pairs of electrons. It's called T-shaped clearly because it forms like the letter T with the bonded electrons, and it is polar because the non-bonded electrons push. Okay, the next shape is trigonal bipyramid linear. It has 2 bonded electrons and 3 unbonded electrons. The bonded electrons form an 180 degree angle. It is nonpolar because the 2 charges meet in the center, and these unaffect the polarity. It is called linear because they form a line, and it's still under the trigonal bipyramid because it still has the non-shared electrons here. Okay, so now we have the octahedral shape. This one has 6 bonded electrons and 0 unbonded electrons. It is nonpolar because all of the charges meet in the middle of the central atom. It is called an octahedral because it forms 8 triangles, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. wait. So then there's the square planar. It has 4 bonded electrons and 2 non-bonded electrons. It is nonpolar because the charges of all the bonded electrons meet in the center at the central atom. There is 90 degrees between each bonded electron, and it is called square planar because it forms a square on a single plane. Okay, so the last shape is square pyramidal. It has 5 bonded electrons and 1 non-bonded electron. It is called square pyramidal because it forms a square as well as a pyramid. The bond angles are 90 degrees, and it is polar because all of these bonds would meet in the center while this one would still be out here.